Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're taking a truly fascinating and deeply respectful journey into how sweeping global conflicts actually play out on a deeply human level. We so often think of world wars and international theaters of combat in terms of grand strategy, massive armies, and these huge geopolitical shifts. But today, we're going to explore those massive historical events through the microcosm of just one single American community, the small town of Onalaska, Wisconsin. We are going to look at the very real, very personal stories of the young men from this town who answered the call of duty over the last century.
Okay, let's dive right into this. We've got 5 key areas to cover today. First, we'll look at the Sons of Onalaska, followed by the World Wars, the Cold War era, modern duty and sacrifice, and finally, their legacies of valor.
So, starting off with Section 1, the Sons of Onalaska. Before these names were ever etched into stone memorials, they belonged to ordinary young men just walking the halls of the local high school. And to really grasp the weight of their sacrifice, we absolutely have to look at the stark contrast in these young lives. We're talking about kids who were deeply rooted in everyday community life. They were showing animals at the local 4-H club, winning conference championships on the wrestling mat, singing in a high school show choir, or just spending their summers working shifts at the Green Giant factory over in Belvidere. But those completely normal, vibrant civilian lives, they were traded for the most dangerous, extraordinary theaters of war on the planet, literally going from small-town America to the muddy trenches of the Western Front, the frozen mountains of Korea, and the rugged, unforgiving terrain of Afghanistan.
It's like a giant puzzle, and when you piece it together, this timeline brilliantly illustrates the sheer span of history covered by the youth of this single community. From 1918 right up to the global war on terror, whenever the world fractured, Onalaska felt the impact. For over a century, the high school hallways of this town were essentially a direct pipeline to the front lines of history.
Moving chronologically, let's head into Section 2, the World Wars.
Now, what's really interesting about this early 20th century era, a time when Onalaska first sent its sons to a truly global stage, is the incredible diversity of their service. First, you have Private William Himmel. He was a former general store clerk who deployed to the Western Front in 1918, but tragically died of pneumonia just over a month before the World War I armistice. Then, jumping to World War II, there's Walter K. Tomac. He was one of 6 children, enlisted in the Marine Corps right after Pearl Harbor, and perished in 1943 during the North Africa campaign. And finally, you have Floyd H. Briggs, who joined a very specific branch of the military that literally changed modern warfare forever.
So Briggs joined the USAAF, the United States Army Air Force. This was the direct predecessor to the modern Air Force we know today, tasked with everything from heavy bombing to reconnaissance. But here is the heartbreaking thing about Briggs' story. He likely never even saw combat. He perished in a training accident in 1943. It's a sobering reminder, right? It proves that the profound danger these young men faced wasn't strictly limited to active combat zones.
Let's shift the narrative now to Section 3, the Cold War era.
As the world shifted into a new, tense geopolitical reality, the sacrifices required of Onalaska's youth evolved, but they for sure did not diminish. Take a look at the heartbreaking service of Sergeant First Class Renstrom during the Korean War. The timeline of his service is just devastating. He was wounded in action in early September 1950, but incredibly, he returned to duty just 3 days later. A few months after that, in February 1951, he was taken as a prisoner of war. After years of agonizing uncertainty, he was officially presumed dead in January 1954. His remains were never recovered. Today, his name rests forever on the Courts of the Missing at the Honolulu Memorial.
Then we get to the Vietnam era and the incredibly powerful story of Corporal Michael Bruce Turner. Michael was known all around Onalaska for his artistic abilities. He was a drama club kid, had a fantastic sense of humor, and could always find the funny side of life. But, that lightheartedness perfectly complemented a fierce, unshakable loyalty to his friends, his family, and his country. He lived by a pretty intense motto: if you have to fight, fight to win, and protect what means the most to you. And he lived up to that. He ultimately died protecting what meant the most to him in May of 1968, earning a Purple Heart for the wounds that took his life.
3, that is a staggering number. It represents the number of Bronze Stars awarded to Anthony Tony Markevitch Jr. And get this, 2 of those were awarded with a V for valor. Tony was one of those conference champion wrestlers we talked about earlier, who used to work at the local Green Giant factory. He became an elite Army Ranger and long-range patrolman in Vietnam. He absolutely loved the military, especially parachute jumps. But what truly defines his legacy is this: As he was actively being phased out of combat at the very end of his tour, he voluntarily stepped up to undertake one last mission. And it was that volunteered mission that ultimately took his life in April 1969.
And the tragic reality is that the sacrifices continued even in relative peacetime. Specialist 5 Kenneth Rusty Van Ripper Jr. was an Onalaska band member who actually used to play taps at the town's Memorial Day ceremonies. He worked hard and became a top-of-his-class soldier in the 101st Airborne Division. But in 1978, while on the maneuvers, the Gamma Goat vehicle he was riding in rolled down a hill and he suffered fatal internal injuries. The sheer tragedy here, he died less than 3 months before he was due to be honorably discharged, and just 11 days before his wife gave birth to their son, Matthew.
Bringing us into the 21st century, Section 4, Modern Duty and Sacrifice.
Let's move into the post-9/11 world. I want to focus on two incredibly driven Onalaska high school graduates from the very same class, the class of 2001. First up is Adam Service. Adam was a hockey player, a track athlete, and a 4-H club member. He enlisted in the Air Force and became a Special Operations Combat Controller. This is a highly elite, incredibly demanding role. These are the operators in the Red Berets who are right there, on the ground, in the absolute thick of the fight, simultaneously engaging the enemy and directing complex airstrikes. In August 2006, while on patrol in Afghanistan, Adam's Special Forces group was ambushed by a massive force of 100 Taliban fighters. Adam was doing exactly what he was elite at, calling in air support for his team when his vehicle was struck by a rocket-propelled grenade. He was just 23 years old.
Then there is Nick DeWurst from that exact same graduating class. Nick's path was defined by relentless, unbelievable persistence. He wanted to serve. He was originally medically disqualified from the Naval Academy due to a color deficiency in his eyesight. But did he quit? No way. He took an ROTC scholarship at Embry-Riddle, reapplied to West Point, and got in. He became the cadet in charge of the collegiate parachute team, commissioned as an infantry officer, and then just aggressively tackled the military's most grueling training: Ranger, combat diver, airborne, air assault. He was promoted to first lieutenant and company executive officer. And, like Tony Markevitch to decades before him, Nick volunteered to go on a patrol in Afghanistan in July 2008. He was ambushed and killed by Taliban forces while moving up a mountain pass.
Finally, Section 5, Legacies of Valor. As we look at the aggregate weight of what these young men left behind, the honors are just staggering. Purple Hearts, Bronze Stars with Valor for exceptional heroism under fire, Prisoner of War medals, even international honors like the Korean Presidential Unit Citation. When we list them out like this, it's so easy to just see them as brass and ribbon. But remember what we've learned today. These medals represent real, unimaginable sacrifices from the sons of one single community. They represent high school drama students, wrestlers, and 4-H members who gave up their entire futures, who died in training, who were lost as POWs, who fought off 100 enemy combatants at once, so that others could live.
Which leaves us with a really critical thought to end on. We read about global history in massive textbooks, right? But that history is literally funded by the blood and sacrifice of ordinary American main streets. So as we close today, I want you to look at this question and really think about it. When global history is written, how will we remember the local hometowns that actually carried the cost of our freedom? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer.